What does that? What do I mean exactly? So, the Sefer Yetzirah itself is going to speak about Bekitzer, to make it in a very Bekitzer way. The Sefer Yetzirah is basically going to explain how creation came into being, the world, how it came into being. It's going to use two big things. One is the 10, which is going to be the 10 spheres, but not so much. Very, very, very quickly it's going to use that. But the Iker it's going to use is the Oisius, the olive base. And it's going to explain how the world came into being through the Oisius. And it's going to explain that these idea of these Oisius, are sort of the way through which creation came into being, is not just the medium, the process through which creation came into being, but the Oisius is everywhere. You know, remember we learned from Avalafi, that the world is filled with Oisius. That means that Oisius is everywhere. What does that mean? So it's going to explain this in Olam Shana Nefesh. That there's three dagas. There's time, space, and Nefesh, and consciousness. But Nefesh, in Sefer Yetzirah, doesn't mean only consciousness. Nefesh means the Tzuras Adam, the physical person. The Nefesh Adam, but also the Gashmis of the person, the physical person. So everything in this world really has three components. Everything is created, has a time, has a space, and has someone that's in that time and that space. Right? That's every single thing in this world. Has time, space, and consciousness. So therefore, this idea of the Oisius is going to be shown, the Sefer Yetzirah is going to show how these 22 letters of the Oisius, of the Aleph Beis, are reflected in all processes of time, all Zman. So Zman, what's Zman? Zman is it's the movement of the planets, right? So the planets have the Oisius. It's the movement of the 12, the zodiac of the planet Shoy, Toibim, Saturn, this idea. So it's the 12 Oisius are connected to that. It's connected to the Chadashim, connected to the months. So the Oisius are connected on Zman. It's going to be connected to space. The shot is that when you're in a space, you're in a cube. It has six directions. Then there's a seventh. The sixth direction, the seventh, is going to parallel the seven kfulis, which represent the 7 times of Zman. You understand that? And then it's going to show what's in the Nefesh Adam, the person himself. There's the three major letters. Aleph Mem Shin. So Aleph Mem Shin is going to represent the Aleph Mem Shin is let's say Das and the Yesoi, the Malchus. In other words, everything is structured to understand that the Oisius is true in Olam, true in the world, true in Zman, and true in Nefesh. And all these things are interconnected. So if you look at the world and you'll say, okay, there's this time, and there's this place, and then there's a time before this, and there's another place, and there's a you and there's a me. That's true, but on the deeper level, we're all part of a reflection of these Oisius, reflection of these letters. So all the multiplicity, all the many, all the ribu that we find in creation is be'emes rooted in the Mekoyer Oisius, in the source of the letters, the source of Oisius. And the Oisius is now creating, and what's it creating? It's creating Olam Shana V'Nefesh, and it's creating time, space, and consciousness. So when you look at things, you're seeing different types of tzirufim. That's what you're seeing. You're seeing different types of combinations. And there's correct combinations and incorrect combinations. But ultimately, what's really happening is that there's the echad, there's the oneness of Hashem, there's the echad, the one, Achdus Hashem, there's one, and this one, this echad is mispashet, is expressing itself in using these kalim, these vessels of the Oisius. So therefore, when you look at the world, you're seeing an aleph and a beis and a gimel and a dalet. You look at your body, you see a right hand, a left hand, and a middle torso. You look at space, you see this place and that place. You see south, north, mizrach, ma'ariv, up and down. So whenever you're looking at time, space, or consciousness, you're always seeing something different. But the truth is that the deeper truth of that, of all the reality, is that there's one that's being expressed into the many. So this nakuda, so to say a little, there's and the Sefer Yetzirah is going to say this very clearly. There's the Beis HaMikdash, there's the place of the Beis HaMikdash which is a particular location, the Beis HaMikdash in Yerushalayim. That's a reflection. That's like a microcosm. It's a prat of the be'emes of the biggest Beis HaMikdash, which is Dir B'Tachtonim. That the whole olam, the whole world is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Beis HaMikdash. It's not revealed. The Makarash, the Hasharas HaShechina, where do you see the Hasharas HaShechina? Where do you see the Shechina's presence? In the Beis HaMikdash. In the Makam HaMikdash, Befrat, in the particular Beis HaMikdash. But be'emes, that's why I say, Asid Yerushalayim Shespash B'chol Eretz Yisrael, Achid Eretz Yisrael Shespash B'chol Aratzes. Because the truth is that the whole world is the Beis HaMikdash of the Eibishter. The whole Bria is holding Kaviyachol the Shechina. We don't see that. So what's the emes? The emes is that the entire world, all of space and all of time and all of nefesh and everything true and olam shana nefesh is the Beis HaMikdash. So just like in the Beis HaMikdash, Kaviyachol, there's walls. There's this ends here, the Kodesh ends here, and the Kodesh Kodashim ends here, right? There's the structure. So the Sefer Yetzirah is going to explain the structure of the universe. Say that Mizrach is this Shem, and Ma'ariv is this name, and Tzafon is this name. Why is it saying? Because it's saying this is the space that's holding these Shemis, these names, and this is the location of the Hasharas HaShechina. The Shechina is resting. So when you say this, there's two ways how to see this. There's three ways how to see this. One is you're looking at it objectively. Objectively, pshat is that you're mubachutz, you're outside of it, and you're learning this Torah, you're learning this idea. I'm here. This is the idea that I'm learning, but it's a nice idea, and it's it makes me, it inspires me. But I am not part of the experience. I am thinking about the experience. When you say a person has observing, you're observing. It's a mashal to this. It's a mashal about David. If a scientist recognizes the ultimate theory of everything, the unified theory of everything, if someone's having like a deep scientific, excavation of something, and they're looking very deep into the particles and the things of the universe, and they realize that everything is interconnected, right? Does that person become tzaddik? Does that person all become a ruchnistic person? Not dafka. Why not? If you recognize the achdus and everything, why does he become extreme Shema Yisrael from the rooftops? Because pshat is he's not experiencing it; he is observing it. It's a different thing. You're standing outside, and you're explaining that this is the truth of reality, but you're not part of it. You're the observer that's observing that truth of the reality. So one way is to look at it. You're observing what is the truth of reality. So you can learn Sefer Yetzirah. That's what I want to say. You can learn Sefer Yetzirah, and you can learn any Sefer Side, and you could be on the outside. You can say, "Oh, that's an interesting idea." Okay, so what? So it's a nice idea. So therefore, okay, it's interesting. But Torah Hasoid B'chlal is not to be an observer of this truth. Torah Hasoid means that it's a Torah Chaim. It's a living thing. Pshat is that you're not just learning these things. You're becoming this truth. You're observing this truth that allows you to become part of it. When you say I chap yichud elo or yichud tato, I don't know, even a small level. I chap the achdus Hashem. Sometimes the achdus Hashem that I'm here and I'm chaping the Hashem. The pshat is that the deeper level is that's b'chal pnimis haTorah. Even without Torah Sachsid, that's b'chal. That's pnimis haTorah. When you're really learning pnimius, pshat is that it's pnimius. It's eternal. You're not observing it from the outside. You're becoming part of it. You're trying to live as part of it. You understand? It's a very different Decoded, because sometimes a lot of people they say, "Oh, it's a good vart." If you ever learned something pnimi, and after the person comes over and says, "By the way, that was very gishmak," you should really slap them in the face. This is my opinion. I know people do this, and I don't slap, but Bemis I really should, because that was not the point. If you say it's gishmak, if I tell you it's Arab Chaim, it's a Shin Shkop, and I tell you a good svara, and you go, okay, that's fine. It's gishmak. I get it. You're not supposed to become part of the svara. That's the idea. You're supposed to happen intellectually. If you learn Torah Hasoy, Torah Chassidus, you're supposed to say, gishmak. Gishmak means, you know what I'm saying? You have to be it. It's not. I heard a nice vart. You heard a nice vart. You can tell it to another guy. That's not. especially if you learn a little good Torah, you see the Alter Rebbe is not interested many times to give you Geshmak Aveta. He's gonna take you on a ride. He's not like, oh, now I can figure out the pshat and the pasuk. Okay, so these are all, I told you this many times. In Torah Chassidus, and in Torah Chassidus for sure, and B'chal, because Torah Chassidus already, sometimes people write Perushim on Psukim, on Gemaras. That was never the intention. There was never the intention to give you another, because someone say, oh, but it's not the pshat in the pasuk. What are you saying? Yeah, everyone has. If you learn Chassidish Svarim, especially certain Polish Chassidish Svarim, you'll say, this is totally out of context. That's not the pshat. And then the guy says, yeah, it's talking about the pshat. Okay, let's close the Sefer. No, that was not, the intention was not to give you another pshat in the pasuk. The intention was to give you a certain push, to have a shtickle dveikus, a certain feeling, and the pasuk was an excuse, because otherwise they're not going to be able to pull you in. So they say, Shaila is vayikach koirach, what's pshat vayikach, what's pshat kicha and koirach. So pshat is, because no, that's not a teretz on the pshat. You understand? The pshat is not to give you the pshat in the pasuk. The pshat is to give you an experience, and thus you need tools. So it gives you, you're like a shtickle intellectual, so it gives you a shaila. So if you're real intellectual, you say, but it doesn't make any sense. You're right, like it doesn't make sense. It's not supposed to make sense. You're missing the point if you say, oh, but it's a stimmt nicht with the grammar and it's stimmt nicht with the context. I spoke about this a few times, but it's a very interesting, very fascinating thing in Teres Baal Shem. Purely in Teres Baal Shem. Only you find a mamish in Teres Baal Shem, really. Where sometimes he takes psukim. Later Chassidim did this, but not so much like the Baal Shem mamish did. He read the pasuk completely literal. It's called hyper-literally. Pshat is you don't read it in context. Don't read it in context means you're reading the pasuk. There's Avram, and he told Sarah, and this is what he told her. So when he says what you're reading what it says to Sarah, you have to know that it was Avram, and he's told it to Sarah, and that's what he's saying. Well, Hashem says, no, forget, just read the pasuk as is. Pshat has it, but no, read. But that's what it says. That whatever it says there. There's huh? Machshev lo Yisrael is actually a good word also. Machshev lo Yisrael. That the lo Yisrael comes from Machshev. Machshev lo Yisrael means really that a Machshev shouldn't live. That's what it really means, right? That's the context. It's in the context of different types of avodah zarah. Machshev lo Yisrael. The Baal Shem says no. The Machshev lo Yisrael, the no chayis comes from these words. Machshev lo Yisrael. From the words of Machshev lo Yisrael is the lo Yisrael comes from Machshev. That's not pshat. That's the way you could. But if you say that it's a ruchnistic thing. You're saying that something that's trying to give over like a ruchnistic thing. So I don't have the pshat. Pshat, okay, fine. I'll figure out a gemara. I'll figure out pshat. But that's not what I'm trying to do now. That's not the experience. This is one nekuda. So you're entering into the pnimius of this experience, and then in Torah Chassidus is important also the avodas Hashem. Pshat is I'm experiencing. It's all part of the same thing. But the avodas Hashem is like there's a word from the Alter Rebbe. Rav Pinson says the same thing, that the whole Eitz Chaim, that every ois in Eitz Chaim is really the Sefer Eitz Chaim is Musa. It's a Musa Sefer. So if you look at Sefer Eitz Chaim from the Ari, it's very far from Musa. The Sefer Eitz Chaim, the whole thing like Kav and Shettach. What does that have to do with Eitz Chaim? What does that have to do with Musa? But if you chap that the whole nekuda is not to explain you something, a nice philosophy and about an idea, but it's actually telling you about how you're supposed to experience life, then it's of course it's Muslim. To say this in a slightly very simple way, this is what Sefer Yetzirah is saying. The Zohar Kodesh starts the same way. You'll see soon. The opening of Sefer Yetzirah and the opening of Zohar Kodesh and the opening of Sefer Boyer is very similar. It's a very similar opening. But the opening is then they have it in different ways. Each Sefer is mahalach, is a shtickle different mahalach. But the idea is that there's one. That's the yesod, right? The yesod is one, and then one starts revealing itself into many. So the question is it through oisius? Is it through chok? Breish lifel dilot, breish tiri law, golf gift material law? It's some type of carving. Like what exactly happened, or how are we supposed to understand this internally? But that's the nekuda is the point is that there's one, and the one starts reflecting into many. So pshat is that the emes there's a nar yotzei maiden. This is lashon hazayah more. There's nar yotzei maiden. I mean, show me a part of the Daled Rashim. So there's a nar yotzei maiden. Pshat is there's a river that comes from Eden. There's a water that's coming from Eden, which is chachma. We'll see through that's the Sefer Yetzirah starts the same idea with Chachma. So, and then from Chachma, from Eden, there's a spashis of the Dal Rashim, which is Olam Abina, and then there's a spashis of Olam, that the world starts unfolding through this thing. But it's originally everything's really one that's mispashet into the many. There's a zerem, there's a chayis, there's a zerem aliki that's flowing into this world, that's giving rise to trees, to life, to all the entire bria. And this zerem is continuous, right? This havas abriya is yesh ma'ayin l'chodesh b'chol raga v'raga. There's a constant zerem. When I understand that there's a zerem, this flow, this shefa that's coming down, I can understand it intellectually. Okay, that's the truth. I understand. Yeah, there's a chayis l'ki that's coming down every single moment. There's havim machayim kaim the world. I understand it, or I can actually become part of the zerem. L'mashal. I said this mashal a few times, but it's in the Gedic mashal. L'mashal, you're thirsty. There's two ways how to get water. One is you go to the river, you take some water. You take some water out of the river. So there's a zerem. This is a mashal and a nimshal, the same thing. There's a zerem of water that's flowing. You're thirsty. You grab some water. You take a drink. How much did you drink? How much water did you get? As much as your cup was. As much as your cup was. That's what you fill. And what you did now is you took you were mafrid kaviyachol, the zerem, the chayis from the zerem. You're mafrid from the chayis that's coming down. Now it's made there's a flow that's coming. You just took out some water for yourself to get chayis. Go back to Eitz Adas, Eitz Chaim. When Adam Rishon was in the Gan Eden, in Eden, he's told Mikol Eitz Agan, you can eat from everything. Just Eitz Adas Tevera Leiseichel. It's a contradiction. If you say I can eat from everything, you can't tell me 5 seconds later that I can't eat from Eitz Adas Tevera. Doesn't work. You just told me I can eat from everything. So the Zohar says, Pshat is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Adam Rishon, you can eat from everything, you just can't eat from something. The moment you take mi-piria, mem is mi. Mim means from. That's why the Zohar says that mem is l'shabavas. The moment you take mi-piria, you're separating the something from the everything. That's the chasar. If you want to eat as much as you want. You want to separate something, the moment you're separating something, there's misa, there's separation, there's death. When you take something from the everything, when you mafrid the Eitz Adas and Eitz Chaim, because Eitz Adas and Eitz Chaim, Teres Tzadik, and this is the emes, if you read the Psukim, is one thing. There's no the Eitz Adas, the Eitz Chaim B'Seich Hagan, the Eitz Adas Tevera. That's the end of the pasuk. That's what the pasuk says. No, Rashagi, the Eitz Chaim B'Seich Hagan, which means Eitz Chaim B'Seich Hagan is in the middle of the garden. The Eitz Adas Tevera. Dot. Where's the Eitz Adas Tevera? It doesn't say where the Eitz Adas. It says the Eitz Adas Tevera. The Kotzagan or B'Soich Hagan doesn't say that. Pshat is, what does it mean? The Eitz Adas Tevera is the Eitz Chaim. It's one thing. When you come from the place of Eitz Chaim, then the Eitz Chaim is one. Then you have Eitz Adas. It's Nichlul and Eitz Chaim. That's why you can eat Teres Ari. You could have eaten from the Eitz Adas on Shabbos because it's Eitz Chaim. When you didn't do that, you're mafred Eitz Chaim from Eitz Adas, which is God the Zohar in this last week's parsha Shalach. Shlach, and then beginning of Korach, he talks about Mekoshish Eitzim, that he's trying to do a hekesh between Eitz Chaim and Eitz Adas. That's the two Eitzim. Which means when you're trying to pull out the Eitz Adas from Eitz Chaim, that's mid-period, that's period. Period means you're separating.
That creates Tovera, no?
That creates Tovera, exactly. That creates duality, that creates separation. So Pshat is like this, to say it a little different. If I come along and take water from the Zerem, and what's Pshat water for the Zerem? If I say, my ego, I need chayas. I need to eat. I need money. Whatever I need in my life. I need gesund. Whatever I need things, right? And I'm coming to life trying to grab things for myself. And I say, there's a zerem aliki. I understand there's a zerem aliki. There's a chayas aliki. There's a life that's coming through this world. I need something. I come with a little pitcher, a little cup, and I pull out some water. So I get chayas. Yeah, you're gonna eat something. You're gonna get chayas. Temporary. Why? Because you just took a small cup. And you took the cup. Once you took the cup, the water was now nifrad from the Karachaim. You separated the water. So therefore, how much you receive is a little amount. And how much chayes you have? As long as it lasts. You feel thirsty and you feel satiated for as long as the water lasts. What's the other solution? The other solution is you jump into the water. You become a fish. If you jump into the water, then you become part of the Zerem. So how much could you drink? Infinitely. The moment you become part of the Chayes itself, Kaviyachal. This is what Dveikus is. What's shot the person lives with Dveikus? Shot when a person lives with Dveikus is they're becoming one with the Makar Chaim. How do you know? By the way, how do you know if you're living that you have Dveikus Makar Chaim and you're not having Dveikus Makar Chaim? It's kind of pretty simple. If you're always selfish and never grateful and never saying Hoy Lashem Kitov and being thankful for everything you have, then you're like the little guy that's coming around with your little pitcher and grabbing something, saying thank you and going weiter. But if you live with a two of them like that, and you're always saying it's the Chazdei Hashem. Why? Because you're actually part of the Zerem. My life is completely part of this Chayas. What does it mean, Megashmias?
I mean, that's the opposite. Like if you're part of household, you don't say thank you.
You're living Chayas. No, you don't have to say it. You're living it. Gratefulness is not something you say; it's something you are. You're being it. You don't say it. You're right. If you say it, you're still separate from it. You're being it. If you're a mashpia toiv lachem, to use all the oisias, if you're mekabel, you just want to mekabel things in life, then it's your yashas. Fine. So the Eibusher gives you a father. There's a zon of fathers l'kol. The Eibusher will give you that. You daven for your tefillah. You daven that this person should be. Alam, the Eibusher is going to give you because it's kel achim. The Eibusher is going to teva toiv lahitik is going to give you. But what you're going to receive is a small little drop. But if you become mashpia toiv lachem, Pshat is that you're mekabel, amanas lashpia. I receive, but why am I receiving life? You tell the Eibusher, I need everything. I need gashmis, ruchnis, I need all these things. Why do I need these things? To make you feel better? Because I need to be part of I need to do your work in this world. I need to stay in the flow. I need to be mashpia. If my foot is hurting, I can't learn. If I can't learn, I can't. You understand? If I can't handle gashmis and I'm worried about my mortgage, I can't daven and I can't be inspiring other people. If I don't live, if I'm not getting what I need, I can't be part of the shefa. So why do I need this? It's not for me, for my little. That's not what it's about. And if it is about that, I'm not saying that people sometimes daven like this. If it is about that, you'll get your little thing. You get your cup of water. But if you want to really have chayes, and you want to be alive, taka, at every moment, this is an option. When your person lives with dveikus, this is what it means to live with dveikus. A person lives with dveikus is, it says in the Baal Shem that the tzitzis of the Baal Shem, that they were animated. They had like electricity in the tzitzis of the Baal Shem. I don't know if it's begashmis, beruchnis, I don't know exactly what it is, but I can tell you what, I believe it 100%. Because when a person is alive, everything's alive. Okay, you need a little maybe imagination to understand what this means. But when you see a person that's alive, right, a person that's chayes, you imagine his whole life is like animated. Did you ever have this experience? Do you ever see the animation in the world? Sometimes you look at the world as dry, and sometimes maybe you daven in a nice castle, you walk out the world, you see, so the whole world is on fire. You don't have to tell me. I know I've had this experience. Once Yom Kippur, they come outside and they look at the world, and it's a beer de lekes. When it says by Avraham Avinu, it's a beer de lekes. So there's the pirish of beer de lekes. Sometimes say is the hitzah balabira. A beer de lekes usually means that he saw the world on fire, like it being destroyed. But the Heilig Jerusalem says no. Beer de lekes, he saw the world on fire. It's a whole different type of world. You see the world on fire. It's a tumult. It's alive. It's alive. This is what it is to learn, to try to learn more boimik. Okay, that's the Gedama number one. For this is so we have to forbeg, but this is the Gedama. Gedama number 2 is like this. What's up, Avraham Avinu? Okay, so it's Miyuchas Avraham Avinu. Even I think in the time it's Meis Avraham Avinu. Sefer Yetzirah, Meis Avraham. I don't know which print this is, but. Now I'm looking at the printer. I'm not so excited about the printer, but Who wrote who? The guy that printed wrote Meisam Avinu. But no, there's a Ramosha Bortiel, there's Summer Shinim. That right? If you have a Sefer Yetzirah, you look at if you have the Pirush Moshe Bortiel, if you have a Sefer Yetzirah, your mamish in the Mishnah Aleph, it's Avraham Avinu Kosav Sefer Hazeh. There was a Messiah from the Rishonim already. Moshe Bortiel is from the later Spanish Rishonim, from the 1300s. He's a chaver b'chazoi Kraskis. So he wrote this Pirush. It's more like philosophical, but he writes there this Messiah that's from Avraham Avinu. The Ravid. Yeah. Okay. So why do we collect to Avraham Avinu? Why? What's the connection to Avraham Avinu? Again, we said by the end of Sefer Yetzirah it does say, and in the last Mishnah, it's Mishnahs. Rather, it's this Prakim and Mishnah and Mishnahs. That's the way the Sefer Yetzirah is created. That why connection to Avraham Avinu? So the truth is that this goes back to that the Sefer Yetzirah is very interested to understand the letters, the Aleph base, Lashon Kodesh. So we know that the Bria, in the beginning of the Bria, by the Dera Flaga, up until the Dera Flaga, there was one Lashon. There was one language. They had one tongue. They had one language. So Yerushalmi writes, what's this language? The language is Lashon HaKodesh. Why Lashon HaKodesh? Because Lashon HaKodesh, why is Lashon HaKodesh called Lashon HaKodesh? Why is it called holy? So famously, if you're familiar, there's a very famous machlokes between the Ramban and the Rambam. The Rambam holds Lashon HaKodesh has to do with that the Torah doesn't have any language that talks about physical intimacy. The Torah uses only euphemism, it uses shalom, like V'adam Yada Es Chava, doesn't say, so that's why it's Lashon HaKodesh. It's Cherpo Hilonu, this is Lashon HaRambam. It's Shittas HaRambam. And the Ramban goes fire against us. The Ramban writes a whole Sefer called the Geras HaKodesh, that the Ramban says that the Rambam this is incorrect, and he holds it as a whole. That whole thing has got he holds that it's the highest level of kedusha that a person can experience if they do it correctly. The whole arichas, that's the sefer. And the Ramban writes in Shmos and other places. The Ramban writes the reason why Lashon Kodesh is called Lashon Kodesh, the reason why it's called holy Lashon Kodesh is because it's the language of the Bria. It's the language of Nevuah, which means that it's the language of prophecy, and it's the language of creation. That when it talks about creation, and it says Vayomer Hashem Yehi Or, so this means that the words Vayomer Hashem Yehi Or, the words Aleph Vav Reish, created the reality. The Lashon HaKodesh is that it's a language through which creation came into being. So originally, when there was Lashon HaChadim, there was one language. Pshat is, that there was one language means that there was only a singularity. What does it mean that was a language? There was the Lashon HaKodesh. So Lashon HaKodesh, like what does Lashon HaKodesh for us mean? Our Lashon HaKodesh means when our language is expressing, this is the Lashon HaZohar, when the Lashon is expressing the Achdas Hashem. So if the oneness of Hashem, the Achdas Hashem, used Lashon, language, Lashon HaKodesh, to create the Bria, which is the world of Pirud, or seemingly Pirud, Misham Yiparid, which is the world of separation. But the oimik is that it's still, the coil of the Dibur is the Achdas, is the one. Our Lashon, when we use our Lashon to express Achdas Hashem, the oneness of Hashem, our language is Lashon HaKodesh. So Lashon HaKodesh is the language that expresses Achdas. Goy Echad, that's the expression Lashon Echad. Pshat is that we're expressing what is the Echad, the Achdas, the oneness of Hashem. That's the Lashon HaKodesh. But then it became Shivin L'Shonos. What happens when it becomes Shivin L'Shonos? Shivin L'Shonos is, and Abalafia writes this also, that Shivin L'Shonos, the gematria of the word Shivin L'Shonos is it's Siraf Oisius. That the Shivin L'Shonos are, in the Lashon Hari also, it's the Achoraim of the Pnim, which means there's the Olam HaPnim. The Lashon HaKodesh is when I look at a table, let's say I look at a table. So I call a table, in English you call a table. What's this language that we're calling table? What does it mean? It's in the Lashon HaRan, right? The Ran writes, Megan and Durham, it's Lashon HaSkami. Haskami means that it's consensual. English-speaking people say that this thing that has four legs and it looks like this is called a table. Theoretically, it can be called a chair. A chair can be called a table. A table can be a chair. There's no inherent value why this is called a table and that's called a chair. It just happens to be, this is called a table, this is called a chair. Lashon Haskami. There's Lashon HaRaiva in the Chus Krishma, the Raiva writes that it's a pirush. It's an explanation. All the language is a pirush. That's why if you say Krishma and you know what you're saying, if you're saying the language, if you're saying, let's say Krishma Lalacha, you're saying in English and you understand English, you're Yoitza. If you're saying Krishma in German and you don't understand German, you're not Yoitza. But if you're German, you're Yoitza. Lashon Kodesh, even if you don't understand what you're saying, you're Yoitza the mitzvah. Why? So the Ravid says, because Lashon HaKodesh is the Lashon in itself, that's the Mahava of that language. When you're saying Krishma, you're saying Achtas Hashem in that language, in the perfect language. When you're saying the Pirush of it, you have to know what the Pirush is. If you understand German, you understand German. Then you're Yoitza. If you don't understand, you're not Yoitza. So the other Lushonis is the Achorayim, Kaviyachol, is the backside of the Pnim. In other words, I need to know what this table is in English, so I call it a table. But if I want to know what's the Pnim, what's the Emes Chayes of this table, that's the Shulchan. The Oisis of Shin Lam and Chesnun, the Tziruf of the Oisis of Shin Lam and Chesnun is the correct combination of what this table is. This is just about objects. How about ideas? The whole we use language. Let's say in any language we create things through language. Everything that a person understands is through language, right? How do you understand things? How do you communicate? Communicate is through language. So you have an idea, this person tells you an idea, okay, now I understand something. So another idea, you understand something. Are these Sirufei Oisius, these are combinations of letters, which is the Achorayim of the Pnim, are they correct Sirufim or incorrect Sirufim? It's possible that a lot of the Tzirufim Oisius, which is to say a lot of the ways we think about the thoughts that we have in our head, is Narishkeit. Why? Because they're not, the Lashon Baal Shem is, they're not Tzirufim Amitim. They're not correct Tzirufim. What's a correct Tziruf? A correct Tziruf, a correct combination of sounds, is when this expression is expressing Achdas Hashem. The only truth, let's go back again. If everything is, the shoyish of everything is the one is using the oisius to mitztaref and create all the multiplicity. All the things that exist in the world is really the one being expressed. If I'm expressing an idea that's not connected to the one, and I'm using my combinations of my sounds to create another tziruf, this is not a tziruf amiti. This is not a correct combination. It's a false combination. It's alma de shikra. Someone could take this tziruf, this idea, read it, hear it from somebody, and now the person starts acting on this idea. And I say, you know what I need to do in this world? I need to make money. How do you know? Because someone told me. How do you know that's a correct tziruf? Someone has created this fake tziruf, or this inauthentic, this not tziruf amiti, put it out into the world, and everyone starts believing in this tziruf, and it's because it makes sense. How do you know? How do you know if it's true?
It's also Hashem.
Huh?
It's also Hashem.
We're going to get to that. That's very deep, but we're going to get to that. Let's talk about the first level. The first level is, how do I know if a tziruf is a tziruf amiti or if it's not a tziruf amiti? The difference between if it's a tziruf amiti or not, is this thing expressing Achdas Hashem or the opposite of Achdas Hashem? If someone's saying something and this idea is expressing the oneness of Hashem, expressing dveikus and Torah and Yerushalayim and good midas, whatever, it's furthering Achdus, then I know this tziruf, even if it's said in a different language, it's the acher of the pnim, but it's an acher, it's makusha to the pnim. That's connected to the pnim, and this acher is a tziruf of the shivim tzirufim, the 70 different things which become the 70 basic languages of the universe, which become the essential, the 70 nations of the world, which means they're all another combination. But this combination, when it's rooted in its shoyesh of echad, so even this combination is a tziruf amiti. It's connected to a tziruf amiti. It's a correct combination, a correct letter formation. When it's the opposite of something that's expressing the Achdas Hashem, then it's not a tziruf amiti.
It should be more than a tziruf. It should be the kavanah. The zelbe tziruf, on the zelbe kavanah.
It sure, yeah, that's right. So
what should dafke zibitzig? someone starts noch a sprach.
No, that's the shayrish. The shayrish. No, there's obviously there's millions. They're all coming from the same.
The
Shivim Lashonos is sort of like the main frame of these languages. There's like the Sarim Shalmaila. So the Sarim is only Shivim Lasarim. Huh? Yeah, that right. The Shami part of the Shivim Lashonos. That's the Shami part. The Shivim Lashonos represent the Shivim really goes back. Has to go back. It goes back really. B'Shivim Nefesh Yadu Avasedim Mitzrayim. Actually, it goes back to Klal Yisrael. There's a whole maral. The maral goes in Barichas why these numbers, but it's really it has to do with 6 to 7. That 6 is the fullness of life. 7 is the fullness with Klal Yisrael, which is the Decoded and Pnim, which is actually very connected to Sefer Yetzirah, and then it overflows into Shivim Nefesh, and that Shivim Nefesh becomes actually Shivim Umas. But it all goes back to Echad. In other words, there's the Dora Floga was a generation that separated language from its root. That's what the Dora Floga was. The Dora Floga was that they took the Shivim Lashonos and they Misham Yipared, it was Yipared from Lashon HaKodesh. It was Yipared from the place of Achdus. That truth is still going on. The Dora Floga is still continuing. Anytime someone makes a Migdal Shamayim and says this is the truth, I don't care what the truth is, communism or another ism or other ism, and says this is the truth of the world, that's a Migdal. That's a Migdal bubble. Why is it a Migdal bubble? Because it's separate from Achdus Hashem. And it's a whole structure with a lot of language, a lot of ideas, a lot of philosophy, but it's a Sheker Gomur. It's not a Tziyaf Amiti.
Who decides?
What do you mean who decides? It's decided if it comes from, no one has to decide this. If it's coming from Achdus,
You can sometimes have the same language, and for one person that brings into
that's what he's saying. Emestake. That's what we have. That's what we have. That's what we have. We have oisius or words in the Torah itself of Shivim Lashonos. There's a famous Rabbeinu Bechai. If you look at the Dvarim, you guys I do say that's embraced, but in the Dvarim there's a big Rabbeinu Bechai in Ramban. He has a whole arichas of how, and that's why the Gemara is written like that, also with Aramaic and also Lashon Kodesh, the build of both these things, because emes ultimately is the Safa Brura of the Kul Meshaychem Echav, Safa Brura, that eventually there will be a Safa Brura. Safa Brura means that all the Shoyness will be Lashon Kodesh. The Lashon Kodesh of the future is, what's the Lashon Kodesh of the future? Lashon Kodesh of the future is every single language. When all the Achorayim become connected to the Pnim, so every single expression in the world is actually is Achdus Hashem. That's going back to this thing. Why the table also has a reason why it's called a table. It's Lashon Haskami, but that's the Chitzonius. That's the Achorayim of the Pnim. And when this Achorayim of the Pnim, when a person has a relationship called English and says that this table, I'm sitting with this table and I'm diving with this table, I'm learning with this table, or I have a connection to this table and I have some type of bira on the tzaitzes for this table, then the table, the English language of table, becomes a davar shel b'kedusha. And la'aseh the Lashon HaKodesh of la'aseh is the Safa Brura of all the shoynos. That's a Sirif Amiti. This is what Hashem says. This is why a person has to daven and say tefillah, because you're mevarer the oisius, you're mevarer the sounds. When you're saying Baruch Ata Hashem, you're mevarer the oisius and tzirufim amitim, correct tzirufim, but Baruch Ata Hashem. But meanwhile, you're also mevarer all the bas of this world. And ba could be in English and Japanese and Chinese, whatever the ba is. Now you take that sound ba and you mitzaref now to ruch, and now it becomes Baruch, and it's mitzaref to Achdus Hashem. You're now bringing all the shviras oisius, all the broken sounds of the universe, and you're bringing them back together. That's the correct tziruf. So the drawing everything to Achdus Hashem, to the oneness, is to the Achdus Hashem, is the way, is the beer of the Lashonos. The beer of the Lashonos is to get back to Lashon Kodesh. So Lashon HaKodesh, Pshat is, what is Lashon HaKodesh? Again, Lashon HaKodesh is the Lashon that's expressing Achdus. Who was the one, La'achar der Afloge, so in other Marishan, Yitzur Kabbalah Shal Kodesh Baruch Hu, also Lashon HaKodesh, Avada. He spoke Lashon HaKodesh. There's got the Yavitz writes, the Yavitz writes that if a person is born in the wild, doesn't have a language, he'll start speaking Lashon Kodesh. I'm not suggesting you should try this. This is what he says that you should do this. That a person is born in the wild will start with Lashon Kodesh. The Yavitz says it, so we can trust him. But there's actually a Pirkei de Rebbe Lezer, And Pirkei Avos, you know the Sefer Pirkei Avos. It's a medrash that goes through the whole history of Klal Yisrael. And when it talks about Avram Avinu, it says that Avram Avinu was loimed lashon kodesh ma'atzmai. He picked up. He was able to speak lashon kodesh ma'atzmai. Avram is echad Avram. He's mekash himself to lashon kodesh. Kind of pi halacha. I don't know if it's mamash halacha. Rashi brings it down, and it's a Sefer that is a mitzvah la'av to malamed is b'noi lashon kodesh. The girsa that we have in the Gemara in Sukkot and Membeis, the Gemara says that katne yedei l'nanea, so you give us a lulav. Katne yedei l'lmoy malamed Torah, l'daven malamed Torah. It takes out that about lashon kodesh. But the Rambam and Pirush Mishnayos and Avos, when he says that there's mitzvah kala kechamura, so the Rambam writes, what's a mitzvah kala? What's like a thing that a father teaches his child lashon kodesh. Oh, yeah, exactly. It's a long arichas. I don't want to get into the whole long arichas. If this is correct. It's amistach. Yeah, veistach. But I'm saying that the idea is, I'm not talking about lashon, the modern. I'm talking about the idea of lashon kodesh. There was a big conversation. God, also the Rabbi Shab writes about this. We allowed to speak modern Hebrew because it has lashon kodesh in it, and after on Shabbos. The Magen Avram, the Mekabalim said he should only speak lashon on Shabbos. He should speak lashon kodesh. And even it says Uvdin L'chad, the Magen Avram brings down with Tziyurim, when you read, he says that if it's Lashon HaKodesh, then you're allowed to do it. What's Pshat Lashon HaKodesh? Again, I want to explain what Lashon HaKodesh. Lashon HaKodesh doesn't only just mean, I'm speaking of Lashon HaKodesh. I remember my Zaydis used to speak Lashon HaKodesh. When they used to speak to Israelis, they didn't speak Hebrews, they used to speak Lashon HaKodesh. You remember those old people used to speak like that? Yeah, they used to speak Mamish Lashon HaKodesh. That's they used to try to converse with the... But to speak Lashon HaKodesh, Pshat is that you're speaking the language that's revealing the Achas Hashem. That's an akudim. That's an akudim Lashon Kodesh. That's Lashon Torah. But that's what do you mean Father? That's Lashon Torah.
Was Lashon Torah is Lashon Kodesh? Why it's come on to Bria?
No, it's what about Pshat Torah. The Torah. No, the Torah is the Torah is already the Nevuah Pshat is. I'm saying the whole Bria. There's a Lashon from the Shalach Kodesh. That I call it that the Torah is a Rishon of the Likus, and the Olam is a Rishon of the Torah. So Pshat is that the first Rishima that comes out of Kaviyachol B'Kadosh Baruch Hu is the Oisius HaKadoshis. That creates the Torah, and then the Torah creates the world. It's talking about it's about Halma, but that's all part of. You say that Mitzal you don't have Mitzal the Tzarvim Oisius Shalom Nivim Shafayim Haaretz. Pshat is that there's codes that the Lashon Kodesh, actually the Oisius himself. I told you this, the Hirshiminov. That he used to daven with a big dveikus, and Hishliminov was a god very pashti. As you know, the famous story. He became the Mendel Liminov was a big person, and the Hirsch was the shamash. But then he became the Rebbe because he gave brachas and mekayim, and he sat down with a big spilus, with a big dveikus. And someone once asked him, "What are you mechav? What are you doing?" Mela, if you have kavanas harashash, kavanas hari, so you know what to think. What are you thinking? He says, "Was the vedaf trachtim? Habt oisis alein." What do you have to think? I know Baruch, I know the base. I'm Davik in the base, Davik in the Reish. This is Dveikus Ideoisis, Dveikus and Teoisis. Okay, let's start learning a little bit. This is the Hagdama. Okay. Mishnah Aleph. So this is the first mission, this is the beginning of the Heilige Sefer, Sefer Yetzirah. B'shloishim v'shtayim nesivos pliyas chachma. Chakak Hashem. Chakak Yudke. So there's 32 Nesivos, 32 paths. And these 32 paths are the Pliyas Chachma. The first revealing is of the 32 paths is the Chachma. Chachma is like the first the first nesiv that's revealed in this chachma, and it's 30. What's 32? So what's the 32? It doesn't say yet. Doesn't say. So if you look at the Ramban, you don't have this. So if you look at from the Ramban, you'll see. It starts off bishloishim v'shtayim, with be. So the Ramban writes, "Bebeis remez ein soif ki bekoich ein Sefer Metzias or malish and mena atzilas hachma and hachma lam ben nesivus lam almas. The bi is from what? So he goes back to the Bereshis. This is also the Ravid writes the same thing. The Ravid writes that goes back to the beginning of the Bria. The Shloshim Shtayim Nesivus goes back to the beginning of the Bria. What's the beginning of the Bria? So the Ravid writes that there's 32 times. So first of all, Beis B'Shloshim Kimoy Beis Shel Bereshis. That Be means from, so it's emerging from. And what is the 32? These are the koiches and the kroim b'shem Elokim. This is the 32 times that the name Elokim appears in the Torah, in the beginning of Ma'aseh Bereshis. So in Ma'aseh Bereshis, which we do this, but it's not a real thing. This Perek Aleph, the Prakim are not real, but Perek Aleph and Bereshis until the end of Vayichulim, the word Elokim shows up 32 times. So the Ravid says that these 32 refers to the 32 Shem Elokims. 32 times the name Shem Elokim comes. It also, these 32, like Absadia Gon writes, is the Yud Spheres v'Chaf Beis Oisius. Because we're going to say soon that there's 10 spheres and there's 22 letters of the Aleph Beis. So what's Lamed Beis? Lamed Beis is the 10 spheres and the Chaf Beis Oisius Atayra. Okay, so there's the Shem Elokim, and there's Oisis, and the Spheres. So Bereshis. So if you look at the Targum, on the pasuk Bereshis is b'chuchmasa. Pshat is that the beginning of the emergence of creation emerges through is Chachma. Chachma ma'ayin tematzah. So Chachma ma'ayin tematzah means either it comes me'ayin tematzah, it comes from ayin, or Chachma is the ayin itself. The difference between Chachma and Bina, I'm just going to try to unpack this a little bit. The difference between Chachma and Bina is that Chachma also, the Ravid is going to write this. I hope next week, Be'ez Hashem, you have the Sefer. That the Ravid writes that Chachma, hu goylem b'li tzura, it's like the substance without form, and goylem b'gematria Chachma. That the goylem is gematria Chachma, and he says, Kena Yud, he reishis kol ha'isra achis v'nemus mehem. The same thing also, the Yud is like the reishis of the beginning, the Chachma. And he writes before, which is, Kol ma'shavar kol shabaruch be'lamik connected bara ba'adam. The chol zegedei, that everything is reflected in the microcosm of the macrocosm. Remember, we're saying that everything in the world is olam shana nefesh. So when you're going to understand the nefesh, and nefesh we said is not nefesh like the neshama. Nefesh means the guf, the whole thing, the whole your metzias. When a person understands his metzias, he'll understand elokus. He'll understand from the micro, he'll understand the macro. Why? Because everything is interconnected. There's one that becomes revealed in this world. In this revealing, it's revealed in time, space, and into nefesh, into olam shana v'nefesh. They're all just an expression of the one, and they all function as parallels to each other. So everything you're going to see in the olam, you're going to see in the zman, and everything you see in the zman, olam, you can see also in the nefesh. So if I understand my nefesh better, I can understand zman better, I can understand makim better. Why is that? The chol zekadeshin is boina b'toich hanigal anis asisar chachma. Achar oy nak v'zois u'b'sarach zalaka. So when a person says, I understand b'psarei, I understand who my nefesh is, who I am on a physical level, I can understand the lakus. What's the connection? A person can say, this is Nakdam Sha'ar. In Nakdam Sha'ar, the Yetzirah Getalia asks, a lot of Sefer Soid is based on a certain type of seichel. That the way the Bria comes is, I'll understand that first has to be like he says here, Chachma. That first, the ratius of the Bria, the beginning of the Bria is the Chachma, and through Chachma, which is the Goylam, which is like the idea of the substance of the Chomer, through that you can create a tzura, because that's the way we understand creation. Let's say if I want to make a table, what do? I take a Goylam. I never made a table, but let's say theoretically, if I wanted to make a table, you take a piece of wood, that's a goylem, a shtick holz, a goylem, a shtick holz. You take one piece of wood, you chop it, cut it down, whatever you have to do. People know it, maybe Yochi knows how to do it. Some people know how to do this, and you make a table. So pshat is you take a goylem, you make a tzura. the tzura was in the goylam. In other words, you didn't create something new. All you did was you revealed what's already there. Right? If you sculpt something, if you sculpt something, you have a piece of what? Yeah, exactly. But no, they don't know this. So there's a piece of whatever marble, and you sculpt the David. You sculpt a certain image, and you create this image from it. So what you're doing is you're megala, you're revealing what's already in the thing. You're not creating something new. So the emes, what happens is once everything exists in the chomer, in the goylam, which is the yud, is the nekuda, is the chacham, is the first emergence. That's what says Bereshit bara Elokim es hashamayim v'ha'aretz. Shamayim v'ha'aretz lab is called tzaveh. Pshat is and the yom aleph, the bria, everything was created. What's not everything was created? Everyone was creating as a level of the goylam. Everything was as one mass. And then in the bria it starts sculpting. That's why the lashon habriya, the word bria, only appears 3 times, which we'll see soon is also connected to 3 mois, 3 mother letters. Because the bria is ischatshus, is davi yashmayim. That's the Ramban writes, right? When I say the word asa, yatzar, these are all amar, these are all types of bria, which in the creation itself, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is yatzar and bria. But the bria yashmayim, only happens by the beginning, Bereshit Shmayim v'Zaretz, by the time Nagadol, the bria salvim, because that's a chiddush, the chiddushim. But the first chiddush is that there's a bria of the bria of the world. That's bria yashmayim. That bria yashmayim is a nekuda. From that nekuda, you sculpt it and you have different.
What about the koirach?
What?
The koirach.
What's my koirach? Oh, that's the same as a chiddush. That's a bria of Hashem. That's why it's lashon bria. That's a chiddush.
It wasn't already there.
That's what it says. No, that's that. Baruch Yivra Hashem. That's a bria chadasha. Even though it's nivra b'shem ben hashmashas, right?
Matter?
Huh? Yeah, it's matter, substance. It's matter. Come on, it's clear. That's goyel. It's matter. Yeah, it's matter. It's pure matter. Yeah, exactly. It's matter. This idea, and it's the size of it's minuscule. It's the beginning of all matter. But that matter has everything. Has all the creation. It's Shemayim. That's all. It's Chol Tzavayim. You can't see it yet. You don't see the Chol Tzavayim in every single thing. But that's what the Torah is saying. That in that singularity, that came. This nekuda, this nekuda to say that, this idea to say this, is because that's the way we understand the world. In other words, if I want to make a table, this is the way I do it. I take a girl and I make a tzura, I make a form. Why do we boxing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say that's why Hashem created the world? Who said? Maybe Hashem created poof, everything can. It could be, right? There's no reason why it had to be this way. So the Shai writes this same pasuk. This is a nekuda. This is a very important nekuda. Why was that? Because that's what the Eibusha wanted. The Eibusha wanted, Kaviyachol, the Boyer wanted that the Nivra should have a Sagan Alikus, should have a certain understanding. Why? Because that's the Eibusha. That was a Chassan Eibusha. So therefore, the Eibusha created the world in a way that everything we understand in our personal life, we can say if it works in our own little microcosm, in our own personal goof, in our own nefesh, it works this way. We can understand that's the way it works on a macro level. Exactly, reverse engineering. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. But that's the way the Boyer wanted it. The Eibusha wanted it to be this way.
That's only from our perspective.
The Torah says it.
We can't use the terminology of within our perspective to explain something that is pre-Simpson.
We never talk about pre-Simpson. No, this is the Lachat Simpson. We don't talk about Lachat Simpson. Pre-Simpson, you can't talk like that.
But at the same time, we say that doesn't have to be this way, right? So it only.
What? The Simpson doesn't have to be this way, but post-Simpson has to be this way. The Ishtalshus has to be this way. In other words, once it already starts this process, that's the process. Why it has to be this way? Because the Eibusha chose to be this way. Now I can understand why it works. You tell me what happened before the process?
It doesn't have to work this way. We're saying at the same time it doesn't have to work this way.
But it did. No. Once the choice was to be in this way, that has to work. It could have been another choice in another way, but the choice was not that way. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the choice to be in the way of Ishtalshus. Okay, therefore I can make sense of it. I can understand. But this is a principle. I just want to say this is not only a principle, a ruchnistic principle. It's a principle b'chal in life, and all this discovery and all scientific exploration comes from this yisoid. I can only understand the world from my own prism. And therefore, I must say, as predicated, as a foundation of all that truth, is that what I'm going to understand in my own way of thinking is the truth of the outside world. Who made that up? Who decided that? That's a ruchnistic principle. So in other words, any explanation of anything in the world is always coming from the principle that was working in a certain structure within my own mind, is that's the way I'm going to understand the universe, and the universe is going to make sense that way. Why does it have to be this way? It doesn't. And the only answer for that is it's a pasuk. In other words, if any person comes and says, scientifically this makes sense, Kenzheim, you just projected your understanding of the world onto the world. Who said the world functions the way you understand it? The only answer is that since we're all part of it's a ruchnistic teretz, it's a spiritual teretz. The answer is, since the whole world is working as one organism, and everything is an expression of the one, so therefore, if it's true by me, it has to be true in the world. And that's the foundation of all science. You should just know that, in case any Epicurus has problems with you. You should just tell them that you also have a huge belief system, because that's the whole foundation of all science is based on this spiritual principle. Otherwise, there's no science. Nekuda means that everything is a reflection of everything else. That's the Nekuda. That's B'sarach Salakah. This is why it's the Yesod of the Sefer. Okay, let's go back. So the whole idea is because David Shekaviyachal wanted this Ratzon. And what's the Nesivos? Nesivos are, we say, there's the Spheres and there's the Kalim. And the Kalim is the Oisius. To say it a little different, or the way the Ravid writes, there's the Shem Elikim. The Shem Elikim chat is that's the oir. Kaviyachal, the Shem is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is the oir. There's the oir and there's a kli. The oir, what's the chilik between a Shem and the oisis? The oisis are the kalim that are holding that oir. The oir has already a specific tsura. The tsura of this, the form of this oir, is that this oir expresses chsadim, kindness. This oir expresses gvura. This oir expresses tiferet. I'm just using the spheres, but right, rachum v'chanun, kel rachum v'chanun, erech hapayim, rav chesed. There's an oir that's being expressed in a certain way. What's holding that oir? Kaviyachal. What's holding the oir is the kelim. So the shame, yeah.
Is it that the kelim themselves are forming the or to be that?
That's a very big machlekes of Kabbalah. Very big machlekes. The machlekes is the oir is the essencius agnuzis in the oir before the kelim emerged. That's a very famous machlekes. In other words, that's a complicated question. The teretz is that it's sort of a hybrid of this. If you want to look at someone that has a long arichas and one day and Amanis Elikus about this, a big machlekes Kabbalah about this. Most say that there's already a tzur in the oil without the kelim, and that's the kli that exists within the oil also. Kaviyachal. That there's kelim in the oil. There's essence spheres like nuzes in kodim atzimtzum, which is very hard to understand. But let's hold that for a second. We'll use a very simple example. The simple example there are Makrites in the Pardas is that there's the oil and there's this kelim. So the kelim are, let's say let's take it on a marshal. There's a red keli and there's a green keli. The oil that's poured into it, the water that's poured into the kelim, it's all the same oil, same light, same water. You drink the water in the chesed, and you drink the water of Eragvur, you taste the same water. For the person that's observing the water from the outside, looking up, this appears as red water, this appears as blue water. It looks like the oil is different. It's not the oil is different. The oil is the same. That's why something is called a chlif d'chtaya, that the oil can change kelim. The oil of chesed goes into the kelim gvura. Oil of gvura can go into the kelim of chesed, because the oil doesn't have a tzura, even though it does that a little bit. Okay. So let's go back to the Shem Elikim. So the Shem Elikim is Kaviyachol. There's different names of Hashem, and the highest name is obviously the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Shem Aviyah, and the kli that holds the Shem Hashem, the Haviyah, the Havaya. Chassidus is called Havaya. Shem Hashem, Yud Kei Vav is called Havaya, which is the Haviyah, the beingness. The ultimate, the beingness. The beingness that gives rise to all being. That's the Shem Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei. Is Mislabish, Kaviyachol, the Kli, the vessel of that, is the Shem Elikim. Because when we look at the world, what do we see? We see Elikim. Elikim is Gematria Teva. So when we look at the world, what are we seeing? We're seeing nature. Right? You say? The sunrise, sunset, this is the Derech HaTeva. There is no Derech HaTeva. What is Teva? Teva is the Shem Havaya in the Shem Elikim. That's Havaya Hu Elikim. that when you look at Teva, you look at nature, you think this is nature. But you should know that nature, which is also Gematria of Kli Havaya, that Elikim is the Gematria of Kli Hashem, which means that the Kli of Hashem, the Keli, the vessel that's holding the oil of Hashem, is Elikim. What you're seeing is the Shem Teva. So you're seeing Teva. In the Shem Elikim, which is a very interesting name, the Kuzi has a whole arichas of this, it's Simsum, but the Shem Elikim is a very strange name because it's Lashon Rabbim. It's plural. You're talking about Hashem Echad, Shem Elokeinu, Shem Echad is one, and then you call it Shem Elikim in plural. Elikim is many. Shem Elikim Achayim, okay, so there's Choyel, Elikim can be Choyel, but if it's Kodesh, how can we call the name of Shem Elikim that's Kodesh? So Pshat is, the Kuzi has a whole arichas, but I'll be previous, the Pshat is, the interpretation is, that there's two things in this world. There's Eila L'Kach Yisrael, there's Eila, there's me and there's Eila. So when you separate Shem Elikim, what you see in this world is Avodah Zarah. What's Avodah Zarah? When they were Avodah Zarah, they said Aleph Lamed Hey L'Kach Yisrael. Eila L'Kach Yisrael. Eila means these, many. Right? The Gemara also says that one of the, you say this different ways we learn this. One of the ideas of Eila Advarim, that one of the things that we know of Lamed Malachis comes from the word Eila. So Eila is 35, it's 36 with the word itself, 37 with Eila is 37, and Dvarim still is 39. But Eila means many. So that the Eila comes from the Rabbim, many. When a person looks at this world and sees Eila, only Eila, a lot, that's a period in the Shem Elikim. When Yaakov asks Yosef and says, Mi Eila, who are these, mi Eila, what is Yosef's answer? Elikim, he says Elikim. He said mi Eila, he says Elikim. What's he saying? He's saying that the Elikim it's not mi and Eila, two separate things. Mi Eila means what are these? And he says Shem Elikim. Shem Elikim means that I'm miyached the mi and Eila. The who, what is this? What is the many? It's Elikim. What's Elikim? Elikim is Shem Havaya. So when I look at the Bria and I say, there's Lamed, the Torah describes creation saying that the world is created through the 32 names of Hashem Elikim. What is it saying? It's saying the way we observe the world, the way we're seeing the world is through Shem Elikim. It's a revealing of the Shem Elikim. So what do we see? We see many. What are we supposed to see in many? We're supposed to see in the many, we're supposed to see the me and Eila. We're supposed to see Shem Elikim, not Eila. We're supposed to look at the many and see it as Elikim, and then recognize, which goes a little further, that Bereshis Bar Elikim. In the Lashon HaZohar, which is a very thing we have to digest, but the Lashon HaZohar in the beginning of Bereshis is Bereshis, which is the Ein Sof, is B'chachmusa, is Bar Elikim. The Bria was Elikim, Kaviyachol. Hashem created God. Hashem created Shem Elikim. Teva. Or the workings of Teva, or the way we understand Teva. That whole structure is already a Bria. B'shloishim v'shtayim nesivas pliyas chachma, chaka Hashem tzavokis, okay, Yisrael. There's an emergence from the place of, the 32 comes from something. What's the something? B'shloishim v'shtayim nesivas pliyas chachma, chakak. So we said, remember we said before, what's chakak? Chakak means chakika. What's chakika? What's the difference between ksiva and chakika? Ksiva is you're adding, the Alter Rebbe writes, that ksiva means you're adding ink to words, which means it's a davar nifrad that's being added to something else. What's chakika? What does it mean engraving? Engraving, you're revealing what's already there. So the chakak, which is the beginning of the Bria, the chakak is already the Olam HaBria, which is the Olam already that's starting to be expressed, is a chakika in the kaviyachol of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In the chachma, I should say that. Is please chachma chakak in the place of the chachma, that's where it starts, the chakika starts to emerge, but that chachma itself is coming from b'shloishim v'shnayim nesivus chachma, which means the chachma itself is coming from the boyer, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu kaviyachol. The Bria, the first part of the Bria that's emerging as a Hakika is the merging of the Chachma, and that Chachma has within it the whole Bria, but the Bria itself is really a Hakika within Chachma, and Chachma itself is a Hakika Kaviyachol in the Boira. So if I look at the world and I say, what is the world? Ayin v'efes. The world is nothing. It's a lot. It's everything, actually. I shouldn't say nothing. It's everything. The world is a chakika kaviyachol in the boira kaviyachol. Of course, we can't use this language. In kaviyachol, there's like a chakika in the boira, which is a revealing of the bria. So the bria is the emergence of the many that's coming from the one, but it's always part of the one. It's not that there's a separation, that there's a bria, and it's like the Kaviyachal Deibusha created a world that's separate from himself. That's Saka Olam HaBriya. That's the world of Bria. That's something separate. Here, there's no separation. It's chakak from within himself. Kaviyachal. Yeah.
It's like pantheistic.
No.
No.
No, not mamish. No. Do you say pantheistic?
No, panentheistic.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, that's a fancy word. Yes, correct. Yeah. That's correct.
Chila, not pantheistic.
Yeah. No, I thought you said pantheistic. Correct. It's a very delicate difference. I told you what's the difference. Someone's okay. I'm going to end over here. This is how Gishmak Avor. Someone's came that someone's came to the Baal Shem. This is the mice, the way it's told. It's brought down in Baal Shem Alatei in Parshas Yisrael. Someone came to the Baal Shem and told him that what are you so excited about Kriyas Yamsuf? In fact, there's a journal that just came out and says that the sea of reeds recedes every few years. It goes it's like a low tide, it gets very low, and you can walk through. So he came to Baal Shem and said, this is what happened. The sea receded, and they were able to walk through. So the Baal Shem told him that, and who created that Klal Yisrael should be there at that time and this thing, and what's Shem Elikim? Shem Elikim is also Likus. Someone wrote this Torah down and sent it into the Lubavitch Rebbe, sent it to the Rebbe. Years ago, this was in the 1960s, before the Sefer was printed. I don't know if you know the Sefer Baal Shem Al Torah it's not mamish a real Sefer. I mean, it's a Sefer, but it's like it's not an authentic old Sefer. It was printed in Varsha, like right before the war. Someone collected a few things, and some things are, whatever.
That's what Messianic did.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I'm just talking. So someone writes he didn't write him some Messianic. He said he sold him to Baal Shem Al Torah. So the Rebbe writes on the letter back, Salim Estaber. The Baal Shem says thing, because this goes back to the famous machlokes between a lot of the Rishonim, the Ralbag, and the Maralites and the Akdama of Kvuras Hashem are huge, and Akdama Sheni had long, big arichas against this. That the Nisim Shabbat Torah, could you explain them naturally? Could you explain the miracle of the Torah naturally? So the Ralbag, based on the Rambam, they hold, maybe you can explain them natural events. That's so. This person was saying that that's what Baal Shem was saying, that it's a natural event and it's miraculous that it happened. This thing. The Rebbe said it's not Shaykh, but this is what the Baal Shem said. So he said that it's probably Nishtam as a Torah. This is probably not true. He didn't say where the marker was. He just said he saw the Baal Shem al Torah. He said, okay, the Sefer is not such a Meduik Sefer, so it's not.
The Pashas, he wasn't being masking, just in the Shitascha.
Yes, stimmt. Then I saw that I looked at the marker and it's in the Beis Yaakov, it's in the Ishbitzer.
In that number, right?
Yeah. So it's trapped at the stage, but it's a real source. I copied the way I reread the letter and I read this was a mistake. The guy wrote the letter saying, and it's a very dark different. That's why I want to say pantheism in this. It's very different. The guy wrote the letter basically saying that the Baal Shem said that miracles are basically natural. The Baal Shem wanted to say that there's no such thing as nature. It looks like the same thing. One is to say there's no such thing as Teva Klal. Ain't Shom Tzia is Teva Klal. Everything's Nisim. You're telling me it's Teva? What's Teva? Teva is Likus. That's one way to say. To say that there's only Shem Havai. And Shem Elikim is only a Kli to Shem Havai. So that is what there is. What's the world? The world is a miraculous unfolding continuously. You see Shem Elikim. Sometimes you see me, you see Eila, you see that. But the Emes is really a miracle. It's a continuous miracle, a revelation of the Ein Sof that's coming into this world. That's the Emes, the world. You can interpret it if you don't understand what you're saying, or you write it in the wrong way. You can interpret it to say that there is no Nisim, that miracles are just nature, because everything is nature. So is everything miracles or everything is nature?
It's nature miracles or miracles is nature.
Exactly. Yeah.
You shouldn't be able to tighten it up that way. So it has to be at least in Gluyim.
No, I don't know what the Baal Shem, that's what I'm saying. I don't know exactly what the Baal Shem said, but I'm saying what the Baal Shem wanted to give over The Nekuda, what Moshe wanted to say is that there's no such thing as a natural thing. There's no such thing in the Teva. There's no such thing in Teva. Everything is a Likus. Everything is a miracle. Everything is Nes. There are exactly correct. No, the person was he didn't understand the story. So he didn't chap what it said. He probably didn't see it in the marker, and he heard it from somebody. He wrote it in. That's the Ma'aseh. That's B'shloishim Mishnayim Nesivus Pliyas Chachma. Yeah, I mean, we should continue. David should give us koyach. So this is the first. You get a taste. You should buy the Sefer. So if you can, then we can actually learn. Nah, you should get a proper Sefer. Yeah, you look very serious. Shaggy, down the Meyer. Want to make a minion? Meyer? I don't know. Yeah. It's down Meyer.